with a lot of these people that are flawed and create great work, it's okay to love the work, but not to agree with everything about the person. I think that's something that I've had to do a lot in my life now because I'd hang a poster on my wall in my house, or I'd hang a piece of art on my wall of one of these people. I've literally got Inspiration Hallway in my house where there's these 15 paintings of like people like Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and whoever else. And I did the same in my office downstairs. And at some point, one of those people does something I don't agree with. It doesn't mean I don't take the photo down.
Stephen Bartlett, welcome to Times Radio. So I've got a lot to pick your brain about, as I'm sure you can imagine. And actually, I was really interested, just given your sort of your success and how sort of attuned you are to modern work and the modern workforce and kind of what the future of jobs and the future of skills look like. I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to kind of pick your brain about how we resuscitate the economy in with that in mind. So no pressure, but we'll go in at the deep end. You're talking a lot today about medium-sized businesses, right? And those being the engine of the economy. Is that right?
Yeah. And your question's really interesting. I think economies are very psychological systems, I think. And when there is fear in an economy, it retracts. And when there's optimism and positivity, then you get growth. And I think that really starts on an individual level as well, in terms of founders, companies, entrepreneurs, startups, having feeling like they have the environment they need to be optimistic and to take a little bit more risk in terms of hiring risk, in terms of innovation risk. I'm talking specifically about mid-sized businesses today because of some research that came out from RSA called the Mighty Middle Market Report, where they highlight the importance of those mid-sized businesses between about 50 to 250 employees. And those businesses, although they're about 1.7% of in terms of the proportion of, there's about 1.7% of the total business. How would I say this? They are 1.7% of businesses in the UK are mid-sized, but they account for about, in 2019 it was about 17-ish% of revenue towards the economy. So they're incredibly overperforming. But when we think about the light that's shone on them, the support they get, where it's R&D funding or anything that relates to the supply side, it's just not there. We think we care a lot about small businesses, and rightfully so. Even if you look at social mentions, small businesses are mentioned 60 times more than mid-sized businesses, but they are incredibly resilient companies. 71% of them think that they're going to have a good or very good year over the next 12 months. When I looked at a previous report on small businesses, a huge percentage of them don't believe they're going to exist in 12 months' time. So coming back to your question, it's about having that optimism that mid-sized businesses have. It's a very psychological thing, I think, and people don't always like that because there are sort of practical things that can support that, but on a level, we need to get people feeling optimistic, and we need companies to feel that level of optimism too.
And I suppose one of those, a route to that optimism, I guess, is overcoming some of the big elements that are in the room. Another big question for you, and I'm not going to get you to solve the Brexit problem, Stephen. That would be a hell of a lot to put on you on a Friday morning.
Yeah.
But it's an elephant in the room, as is the workforce and getting workers and our general kind of relationship with the world and with the EU. Do you feel like we are on the right trajectory in terms of solving those problems?
I don't think we should have left the EU, if I'm being completely honest. I think that's probably a bad idea. And I think it's the situation we find ourselves in, though. So instead of dwelling on it or arguing with each other or attacking each other about it, I think now it's about doing the work that needs to be done to make sure we make the best out of the situation. Do I think we're on the right trajectory? I'm much more hopeful now Liz Truss is out the door, if I'm honest. And I think that it's kind of being reflected in what we're seeing in the economic stats around currency and hopefully around in the jobs market and around inflation shortly when we get the full sort of budget out the door. So yeah, I hope that I think I have a suspicion that we're moving in the right direction, although time will tell.
And if you were advising Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt, probably most of the point right now, what would you, if they came to you and said, Stephen, look, come on, give us your sort of top tip, the thing that we should be prioritising right now and doing, what would you say to them?
It all focus on innovation. Like, what does the next 10 years look like, and where is the big opportunity for business and our economy, and therefore for the jobs and talent market, and therefore investment on a global scale? What is the answer to that question? What does the next 10 years look like? And how do we support entrepreneurs and builders that are going in the direction of that opportunity? So for me, some of the really interesting things that are happening center around artificial intelligence, around blockchain technology, or generally around automation. And I think it's still early enough to say that as it relates to like the blockchain technology aspect, we're still early enough to create an environment that will draw in an unbelievable amount of investment and talent to the UK to build in that space. And the next big Apple will probably be in that space. It'll probably be in the blockchain technology, AI space. So that's what I'd be doing if I was Rishi. I'd be getting the best minds in the world into a room and saying, how do we make this the best place in the world to build those types of companies?
Do you feel like those people who are in office or get elected to office, those people who are the legislators, do you think they understand that industry well enough?
I have no evidence of that. I have no evidence that they understand. And I've been looking. It's quite frustrating at times, to be honest, but the disconnect between the people that make the rules and what's actually going on at the forefront of like technology and innovation and business. And I've spoken to some friends. I spoke to some. I probably shouldn't name them, but one of the most famous business people in our country. He said to me, "Give me a warning." He's about double my age. He said, he goes, "Don't get involved in the government because if they ask you to come down and whatever, they're just doing it to score political points. They're not interested in what you have to say. So don't bother trying to go down. When they invite you down and they say, 'Oh, come and sit with us and we'll listen and we want to hear your thoughts on.'" No, they don't. They want to take a picture, and then that picture's used to make their sort of political base think that they care about business and innovation, but they don't. They don't care. I'm sure they're going to do it their own way, based on their own sort of agenda. So, yeah, I think there is a disconnect.
Really
And I'm still trying to figure out why. Like, it feels like everyone that is in power like went to the same school and comes from the same place and is the same type of person, and it's so unrepresentative of like the modern world. It's even. I don't think it being skewed in age is a good thing. If you think about where like a lot of innovation's coming from as it relates to the internet, podcasting, media, blockchain technology, it's often young people. And those young people aren't calling the shots in our government. So I think that should change.
And I suppose my obvious next question to then, Stephen, is how about you? Then, if we need people with a diverse background, skills, an understanding of how the real world works, you are primed and perfect for going into politics.
The problem is I'm not convinced that's where change happens. I know this sounds like a strange thing to say. I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson once upon a time say, the most influential people in the world aren't those that are elected. It's those that have influence on the electorate. And, and it makes sense that those that are elected are basically a representation of what the electorate think and feel. So the most important work you can do is probably what you're doing now, which is like speaking to the electorate and getting them to care about certain issues, like getting them to care about the climate, for example, or whatever it might be. Because if they care about those things, then that's reflected in how they vote. So I think that's the role I'd like to stay in. That's why I do my podcast. And in the future, I'll probably build a pretty big media company over the next 10 years. Which hopefully does exactly that, which is, helps people to feel and think a little bit better about things. So I'm not going into government. I would never do it. I don't think there's any amount of, I've thought about this before. I don't think there's any like amount of factors that could come together to make me interested in doing that.
I would say that's a shame. But I hear your argument loud and clear.
Yeah.
The other thing as well, that I was very keen to kind of get your take on is you very famously built an empire really on the back of on social media and Social Chain, your sort of original company Social Chain, or one of your original companies Social Chain, was a really powerful kind of marketing company. If people if people don't know this part of your story, you had a huge amount of really influential, quite powerful social media accounts and lots of other sort of bits and bobs going on with Social Chain. But that was a big part part of the business. And I've heard you talk quite a lot about the importance of sort of building a brand and how entrepreneurs are building their own personal brands and using that as a platform for them to create something, create their business. I'm incredibly keen to get your take on what you think has gone on in the last couple of weeks and months with Twitter in particular, and whether that sort of, the importance of a place like Twitter for businesses has started to change. Whether that kind of, your sort of thesis there that's a great place to build a business is undermined by the fact that sometimes those places can end up in the hands of somebody who can change them or ruin them, perhaps, arguably.
There's a lot of scaremongering going on, and there's a lot of like fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We call it FUD happening at the moment with Twitter. Where if you look at like what's actually changed, can someone tell me what's changed so far, other than there just being loads of like chatter and noise and excitement? Some people will listen to this and say, "Oh, hate speech is up or something." Well, I can see the stat. I'm looking at them as I'm speaking to you right now. The stats on hate speech on Twitter, and the impressions are down 1/3 from pre-spiked levels. So hate speech seems to be under control statistically. There is a lot of anger and concern. I get that. That's a very real thing. People are entitled to feel how they feel. But I think it's nothing's changed yet. They've messed around with verification a little bit, and I think probably broken that. But I think we should reserve judgment and step a little bit away from just going with the crowd's emotional sort of panic and see what happens. And there may well come a time where something substantive changes, and it makes me develop a new opinion on Twitter. But the fact that Elon owns it doesn't, in and of itself, make me run away from it. I mean, Elon owns Tesla, and those are great cars. I don't have one, but everyone that has one will tell you they're just really great cars, and that led a revolution in sustainability and in the automotive industry, which I think deserves a round of applause. If Elon ruins Twitter, or if he makes bad mistakes, I'll be the first to say, but he hasn't yet. It's just FUD right now. So I don't think it's a cause for businesses to run away, which I'm seeing a lot of. I think I saw Sam Harris delete his Twitter account last night, and Stephen Fry, one of my podcast guests, the episode's out soon, has deleted his Twitter account. And when I was with Stephen, he told me how he felt about Elon and the takeover, and he was concerned, to say the least. But I think we should just wait and see, because we're going to have the data, we're going to have the stats, and that's typically my position on everything. It's like I'm very hard to move based on the crowd and what's trending. I try and develop my own opinion on things, and I think we all should.
And to profess to Stephen Fry, I love Stephen, but he does delete his Twitter every 6 months, doesn't he? And then comes back and then goes back again. So
he does. It's not
the best approach.
Yeah.
God love him.
And I think that's actually quite a good approach. I respect someone that can just say, do you know what, delete this app. It's not serving me. It's not good for my mental health, whatever. And then just pop back on when you're feeling better. I think that's something quite cool about that. Like it's a TV and you just turn it off and on. So.
Yeah, fine. Why not? I mean, Elon Musk is a fascinating character, an incredibly fascinating businessman. What do you make of him?
He's a complicated person, a very complicated person. On one hand, he is clearly intentionally provocative and seems to enjoy provocation. On the other hand, he built SpaceX, Tesla, PayPal, Neuralink, Zip2, which are just standout defining industry shifting companies that, probably would come from the mind of someone who is quite unusual and obscure like he is. He's a very complicated, multifaceted, flawed genius. I think that's the best way to describe it. And with all these people with a lot of these people that are flawed and create great work, it's okay to love the work, but not to agree with everything about the person. I think that's something that I've had to do a lot in my life now, because I'd hang a poster on my wall in my house, or I'd hang a piece of art on my wall of one of these people. I've literally got Inspiration Hallway in my house where there's these 15 paintings of people like Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and whoever else. And I did the same in my office downstairs. And at some point, one of those people does something I don't agree with. It doesn't mean I don't take the photo down. It means that their photo remains there for the peace of genius that I respect about them. And Elon is very much the same. There's things I heavily respect about him, and then there's things I just think, ugh. But I do want to interview him on the podcast because I want to find out if he's happy. I don't think he is, and I think he admits he's not. When he was asked this question nearly by Joe Rogan, he was almost in tears. He was stunned into silence, and he says that you would never want to be me. You would never want to be in my head. It talks about the pain of being in his head and alludes to his unhappiness. And I'd love to have him on the podcast at some point. So I'm going to try and figure that out.
And it would be, I would pay a lot of money. I know it's free, effectively, but I'd pay a lot of money to hear that that conversation between you two. Speaking of which, I also just wanted to pick your brains just very briefly on Matt Hancock as well, because you famously had Matt Hancock on your podcast, and when he sort of went into the jungle a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot of clips that you of your interview with him started to sort of recirculate and go. Yeah, they did. I saw quite a few of them in my feed. Yeah, around that time. What did you? I mean, you spent quite a lot of time with him, like in very close proximity to him. What did you make of him?
I tend to have a rule where once a podcast is been on, I have a rule where I don't speak about them in terms of what I thought of them, because I think the purpose of the podcast is to try and let people make their own minds up. It's like, I don't like the idea that I then give a second commentary once they've left. It feels a bit distasteful. But what would I say about Matt Hancock? He contacted me and asked to do the interview, which I was very surprised by, but he listens to the podcast and wanted to do it there. I told him not to wear a suit, so he ended up wearing the turtleneck, which he got roasted pretty badly for. So I don't think he's ever going to wear a turtleneck again. He was, I don't know. I don't know if politicians are really used to the medium of podcasting and the fact that it's really, really long, and you're going to be allowed to speak, but I'm going to ask you anything. I think he is. It's funny because I actually think that on going on this TV show that he's on now, I think for him, I think it's probably been a good move because I think people are going to see him, but I don't think it's a good move for his constituents, and I don't necessarily believe that government officials should be going on reality shows while they're at work, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, that's basically my thoughts on him.
I think that's a widely shared opinion. And I admire your rule about not a secondary comment and opinion on your guests. I like that. Okay, I've got one final question for you then. Your work ethic, Stephen, is absolutely relentless. You seem to be at all hours, working incredibly hard, building things, creating things. What's a day in the life of Stephen Bartlett like? Can you take us through it?
I wake up early, start work, usually about 8 o'clock, depending on what's going on that day. Usually starts with a phone call. And then my day is always so different. I'm usually doing something media related at least once in the day. And then it's just a combination of running multiple companies at once. These companies will have CEOs that operate them. And my role is to think about strategy, vision, resourcing them, funding, et cetera, et cetera. So there's about 3 companies that I founded that I'm running at once. And one of them is the company that owns the Diary of a CEO, which is my company. There's about 30 people there. Then there's the Third Web business, which is valued at about 160 million. And there's 30 people there. And then there's Flight Story, which has over 100 people now, which is a marketing group. I run those 3 companies throughout the day. They all require different things of me, board meetings. Then I have my Dragon's Den investments on top of that. I have some other investments and interests. I record the podcast. I work out. And then I have a girlfriend. These are the things that consume my time. But the order of which they consume my time changes every day. It's pretty crazy. I have to say. My day is pretty crazy. But I have to say, I really do love it. I feel very lucky. And all of it, I'm fortunate enough to be able to pick my struggle. These things that I'm struggling over, whether they're issues in businesses or whatever else, or personal issues, they're chosen struggles. So I feel lucky.
That's a very nice turn of phrase. I like that, picking your struggles. Do you get downtime? What do you do to relax?
Watch football. I'm a big Manchester United fan. I DJ. So I've been learning to DJ for the last 12 months, and I'll be doing some big shows then. I'm writing two books for Penguin at the moment, which consume a lot of my time, and I'm writing this big musical show that called The Diary of a CEO Live, which we're going to tour next year, probably starting at the Royal Albert Hall and then going international. I spend a lot of time thinking about that and the script and the music and stuff in the gym, playing around with that. I get massages and then I work out. I work out every day, 7 days a week, and so that's also downtime for me. Yeah, combination of those things. I'm not actually that interesting. I don't party. I don't have a Lamborghini. I don't have a yacht. I don't have a private jet. I'm not interested. So my life's very straightforward. It's very work and friendship orientated. So yeah.
You also pivoted to two I think that projects that could be definitely deemed work when I asked you what you do to do downtime. So I get the sense that there's a lot of
Yeah.
that you find perhaps solace in that work as well, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. As I said, it is voluntary struggle, and it's also meaningful to me that it feels like play. And if I even reflect on what I was like as a kid, the things when I was playing, a lot of people might have been playing with an Action Man or a Barbie or whatever. I was turning my bunk bed into a business and making fake money and handing it out to my brothers to come and spend at my fake salon bunk bed. So it's always been my play has always looked like work, and still as an adult today, it still does. So but I love it and I'm happy. That's the most important thing. Like I feel very overwhelmingly, and overwhelming is a key and very intentional word there. Fortunate to have work that I just love every day. So yeah, very very grateful.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and thank you for taking some time out of your incredibly busy schedule to spend some time with me. It's been a real joy, Stephen. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, mate. Appreciate you. But no, we've not seen each other for 8 years now or something. So lots
A long
changed,
time,
but it's good,
a
good to
very
see
long time. And if you change your mind on politics, I'll happily help you run your campaign. You give me a shout. You let me know.
Don't wait for
I
the
won't
calls.
hold
Yeah.
I won't hold my breath, but
Yeah. Okay. Okay.